The alarm started at exactly 14:27 Galactic Standard Time. Commander Hyun-sik was enjoying his afternoon tea when the first sensor array at Station Omega-7 began screaming. The sound was unlike anything he'd heard in his 20 years of deep space monitoring, a piercing wail that made his blood run cold. "What's happening out there?" he barked, rushing to his command console. The massive holographic display showed empty space one moment, then suddenly erupted with readings that made no sense. Space itself was tearing, not the gentle ripples of normal hyperspace travel that every civilized species used, but actual tears. Here in the fabric of reality, purple and silver energy crackled along invisible seams as something massive pushed through from another dimension entirely. Lieutenant So Young's hands flew across her sensor controls, her face growing pale as impossible. Readings flooded her screens. "Commander, I'm detecting spatial distortions unlike anything in our databases. Whatever's coming through is big, really big." The first ship emerged like a whale breaching the surface of an ocean. It was enormous, easily 3 kilometers long, with a hull so dark it seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars. Its design was completely alien, yet strangely beautiful, with sweeping curves that flowed into sharp, angular sections. No exhaust trails, no visible engines, yet it moved with perfect grace through the void. Then came another, and another. Within minutes, dozens of these mysterious vessels had emerged from the tiers in space. Each one was different in size and configuration, but all shared that same dark, impossible beauty. Some were sleek like daggers, others broad like shields. A few had strange organic curves that reminded Hyun-sik of deep-sea creatures from his homeworld's oceans. "By the 7 moons," whispered Communications Officer Jin-woo, staring at his displays. "There must be over 100 of them now." The sensors went wild, trying to analyze the alien technology. The ships appeared to be made of some kind of living metal that shifted and flowed like liquid mercury, yet held its shape perfectly. Energy readings were off the charts, but the power signatures were completely unknown to Imperial science. "Get me Admiral Taemin immediately," Hyun-sik ordered, his voice steady despite the racing of his heart. "Full priority transmission," as the communication request went out. More ships continued emerging from the dimensional rifts. Some were massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed even the Empire's greatest battleships. Others were smaller craft that danced between the larger vessels like schools of fish around sleeping leviathans. The strangest part was the silence. Every known spacefaring species announced their presence somehow. Radio chatter, identification, beacons, engine signatures. These ships were completely quiet, as if they existed in their own bubble of reality, separate from the rest of the galaxy. Lieutenant So Young's voice cracked with disbelief as she read her instruments. "Sir, these energy signatures don't match any known technology in our databases. The computational power alone would require the entire energy output of a small star. Yet I'm detecting no fusion reactions, no antimatter signatures, nothing that should be powering vessels of this size." A junior technician named Kyung-ho pointed at his screen with a shaking finger. "Commander, look at this. The hull composition, it's reading as both metal and organic tissue simultaneously. That should be impossible." Admiral Taemin's weathered face appeared on the main communication screen, his usual calm demeanor replaced by barely controlled urgency. "Hyun-sik, what's the situation out there? My fleet commanders are reporting massive gravitational anomalies across the entire border region. Unknown vessels, Admiral, hundreds of them. They emerged from what appeared to be dimensional tiers. No hostile actions detected, but their technology is beyond anything we've encountered." The Admiral's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display being transmitted from the monitoring station. His 4 decades of military experience had prepared him for many scenarios, but not this. "Maintain observation protocols," he ordered. "I'm scrambling the 3rd and 7th fleets to your sector. Under no circumstances are you to make any aggressive moves until I arrive." As the transmission ended, Hyun-sik watched the mysterious fleet arrange itself in a perfect defensive formation. The larger ships positioned themselves as shields, while smaller vessels took flanking positions. It was clearly a military formation, yet one that spoke of protection rather than aggression. Young technician Boram noticed something that made her gasp. "Commander, the ships, They're communicating with each other through some kind of quantum entanglement network. The data transfer rates are incredible. It's like they share a collective consciousness. The fleet hung in space like sleeping dragons, their dark hulls reflecting the distant starlight in mesmerizing patterns. Occasionally, soft pulses of blue energy would travel along their surfaces like heartbeats. Whatever these beings were, they possessed technology that made the mighty Valorian Empire look like children playing with primitive toys. And they were waiting for something. Ambassador Jiwoo had faced down pirate fleets and negotiated with hostile alien warlords, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Her diplomatic cruiser, the Peaceful Dawn, glided slowly toward the mysterious fleet, its white hull gleaming against the star-filled void. The massive alien vessels loomed ahead like sleeping giants, their dark surfaces rippling with strange energy patterns. "Take us to within communication range," she ordered Captain Min Seok, trying to keep her voice steady. "But maintain a safe distance. We don't know what kind of weapons those ships might have." The bridge crew worked in tense silence as they approached the nearest vessel. Fiat was enormous, easily 5 times the size of their cruiser, with a hull that seemed to shift and flow like living liquid metal. Strange geometric patterns pulsed along its surface in rhythms that almost resembled breathing. "All frequencies are clear," reported Communications Officer Haewon. "Whatever they're using to talk to each other, it's not radio waves or quantum channels. It's something completely different." Jiwoo nodded, smoothing down her formal diplomatic robes. She had spent years learning to communicate with dozens of alien species, from the crystalline Vorthari to the gas cloud beings of the Nebula Collective. But this felt different. These ships radiated an intelligence that was both ancient and incredibly advanced. "Begin standard first contact protocols," she commanded. "Mathematical sequences, universal constants, basic pictographs. Let's see if they respond." For nearly an hour, they transmitted every type of greeting signal known to the Empire. Mathematics, music, even simple drawings of atomic structures. The alien fleet remained silent, their ships floating motionless in space like monuments to some forgotten civilization. Then, just as Jiwoo was beginning to wonder if communication was impossible, every screen on the bridge flickered, the static cleared, and a face appeared that made the entire crew gasp in surprise. It looked almost exactly like them. The being on the screen had the same basic features as the Imperial species: 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, but there were subtle differences. The skin tone was slightly different, the facial structure more varied. What shocked everyone most was how familiar yet alien this creature appeared. "This is Admiral Dong Hyun of the Terran Expeditionary Force," the being said in perfect Imperial standard, though with a strange accent that seemed both ancient and otherworldly. "We are human." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Jiwoo felt her heart skip a beat. Human. She had never heard that word before in any language database. We greet you, Admiral Dong Hyun," she managed to say, fighting to maintain diplomatic composure. "I am Ambassador Jiwoo of the Valorian Empire. Your language skills are remarkable. How do you know our tongue?" A slight smile crossed the Admiral's weathered face. "We have been watching and learning for a very long time, Ambassador. We know many languages of many species throughout this galaxy." Behind the Admiral, Jiwoo could see glimpses of the alien ship's interior. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. Organic curves blended seamlessly with advanced technology, and strange blue lights pulsed along the walls like veins carrying lifeblood. Most disturbing of all, she could see other figures moving in the background, all sharing that same almost familiar appearance. "What do you want?" Jiwoo asked directly, abandoning formal diplomatic language. Something about this admiral inspired honesty rather than ceremony. "We request safe passage through your territory," Admiral Dong Hyun replied. "We are returning home after a long exile." The word exile sent chills down Jiwoo's spine. Any species capable of building such advanced vessels and traveling between dimensions had clearly been forced to leave their home for a reason. What kind of threat could drive such powerful beings away? Back on the Imperial capital world, Dr. Eunji was frantically searching through the ancient archives. As the Empire's lead xenoarchaeologist, she had access to historical records dating back thousands of years. The word human had triggered something in her memory, a half-remembered reference from some dusty old text. "There," she whispered, staring at her screen in disbelief. "The Chronicle of the Vanished Ones." The ancient document was written in old imperial script, so archaic that only a handful of scholars could still read it. But there it was, clear, as starlight. References to a species called humans, described as incredible warriors and builders who had once shared the galaxy with their ancestors. According to the text, humans possessed technology that bordered on magic, ships that could heal themselves, weapons that thought for themselves, and most terrifying of all, the ability to bond their minds with artificial intelligences. The Chronicle claimed they had vanished suddenly, leaving behind only rumors and legends. But why had they left? And more importantly, why were they coming back now? Emperor Wu Jin received Dr. Yunji's report while sitting in his private chambers high above the capital city. The weight of ruling 1,000 worlds had aged him considerably, but his mind was still sharp enough to recognize a potential threat when he saw one. "Mythical warriors returning from exile," he muttered, staring out at the city lights below. "And they possess technology we can't even understand." He activated his secure communication channel to Admiral Taemin. "Begin mobilizing the full Imperial Armada immediately. I want every available ship ready for combat within 48 hours. Your Majesty, surely we should attempt peaceful negotiations first." "Admiral," the Emperor interrupted, his voice cold as deep space. "Any species that was powerful enough to be exiled rather than conquered is a threat we cannot ignore. We will talk, yes, but we will be ready for war." Meanwhile, aboard her diplomatic vessel, Ambassador Jiwoo continued her delicate conversation with Admiral Dong Hyun. Every word exchanged could determine whether first contact would lead to friendship or catastrophe. General Minho stood on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Victory, watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction. 10,000 Imperial warships surrounded the small human fleet like a massive metal net, the greatest armada in Galactic. History stretched out in all directions, battleships the size of cities, carrier vessels packed with fighter squadrons, and destroyer fleets that could crack planets. "Final positions confirmed, General," reported his tactical officer, Commander Ye Jin. "All fleet groups are in attack formation. The alien vessels are completely surrounded." Minho nodded, his scarred face hard as stone. 40 years of military service had taught him that overwhelming force was the key to victory. The humans had less than 100 ships against his 10,000. It would be over in minutes. "Open a channel to all fleet commanders," he ordered. "Today, we defend the Empire against an unknown threat. Show no mercy." The human fleet hung in space like dark jewels against the starfield. Their ships were still eerily beautiful, with that strange flowing metal that seemed almost alive. But beauty meant nothing in war. Minho had destroyed prettier things than these mysterious vessels. Admiral Dong Hyun's face appeared on screens throughout the Imperial fleet. The human leader looked tired, almost sad, as he spoke words that would haunt Minho for the rest of his life. "We hoped it wouldn't come to this," the Admiral said quietly. "We came in peace, seeking only passage home. But if you choose war, then war it shall be." Minho cut the transmission with a sharp gesture. "All ships commence firing. Full bombardment pattern. I want those vessels turned to dust." The Imperial fleet opened fire as one. 10,000 ships unleashed hell itself upon the small human formation. Massive laser cannons that could melt asteroids, plasma torpedoes that burned hotter than stars, and particle beams that could punch through the thickest armor all converged on the human vessels. The space between the fleets lit up like a newborn sun. Energy beams crisscrossed in deadly patterns, while missiles streaked toward their targets like angry comets. The bombardment was so intense that several nearby monitoring stations had to shut down their sensors to avoid being blinded. But when the light faded, the human ships were still there. Not only were they intact, they were moving. And they moved like nothing Minho had ever seen in 4 decades of space combat. The human vessels flowed through the laser barrage like fish swimming through ocean currents. They twisted and turned with impossible grace, their dark hulls rippling as energy beams passed harmlessly around them. It was as if the ships could predict where each shot would be fired before the Imperial gunners even pulled their triggers. "What in the seven hells?" whispered Captain Su-jin aboard her heavy cruiser, Iron Fist. Her targeting computers couldn't lock onto the human fighters that had suddenly appeared from nowhere. The small craft moved like living things, dancing between her ship's defensive turrets as if the massive guns were standing still. One of the human fighters, a sleek, dart-shaped vessel no bigger than a shuttle, slipped through her ship's defensive grid like it wasn't even there. Her gunners fired desperately, but every shot missed by mere meters. The human craft moved with a fluid grace that defied physics. "How are they doing this?" she whispered, watching in horror as the tiny fighter positioned itself perfectly behind her ship's main reactor housing. "Nothing can maneuver like that." The human fighter fired a single shot, not a massive energy beam or explosive missile, but a thin lance of blue light that cut through the Iron Fist's shields like they were made of paper. The beam struck with surgical precision, disabling the cruiser's main weapons without damaging life support or crew quarters. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out on hundreds of Imperial vessels. Human ships that should have been destroyed in the first barrage were not only surviving, but fighting back with devastating effectiveness. Their weapons seemed to adapt in real time, changing frequency and intensity, to overcome whatever defenses they encountered. Commander Tae-won watched his destroyer squadron fall apart as human vessels wove between his ships like ghosts. "They're not following any known flight patterns," he reported frantically to General Minho. "My computers can't predict their movements. It's like they know what we're going to do before we do it." The human capital ships were even more terrifying. The massive vessels absorbed direct hits from Imperial dreadnought cannons without so much as a scratch on their hull plating. Worse, the damage they did take seemed to heal itself, the living metal flowing back together like water. One human battleship, a kilometer-long giant with hull patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat, engaged 3 Imperial dreadnoughts simultaneously. The Imperial vessels fired everything they had, but their enemy's return fire was precise beyond belief. Single shots disabled weapon systems, engine arrays and shield generators with surgical accuracy. "They're not trying to kill us," realized Captain Dong-wook as his battleship's weapons went offline one by one. "They could have destroyed us easily, but they're only disabling our systems." The realization was almost more terrifying than if the humans had simply destroyed the Imperial fleet. It meant they were so far advanced that they could pick apart the Empire's greatest weapons with casual ease, choosing mercy over annihilation. Dr. Young-soo, the Empire's chief scientist, leaned forward in his chair as the truth unfolded. Ancient records began making sense. The mysterious disappearances, the abandoned colonies, the legends of a species that had simply vanished one day. A coalition was formed. Admiral Dong-hyun's voice carried the weight of millennia-old pain. Species that had once been our friends and trading partners united against us. They demanded we abandon our AI companions, abandon the very essence of what made us human. When we refused, they drove us from our homes. The holographic display showed images of the ancient exodus, vast human fleets fleeing into the dark spaces between galaxies, leaving behind everything they had built. Children born in exile, growing up in the cold void while their elders told stories of a home they might never see again. "We did not vanish," the Admiral declared. "We were exiled. For thousands of years we have wandered the spaces between galaxies, growing stronger, learning, evolving. We have explored realms of existence that you cannot imagine. We have partnered with intelligences both artificial and cosmic. We have become something new." Captain Su-jin watched from her disabled cruiser as human ships began demonstrating their incredible abilities. Vessels that had seemed solid suddenly became translucent, phasing through space itself. Others split apart like flowers blooming, revealing inner structures that defied understanding. "Our ships are not merely machines," Admiral Dong-hyun explained. As the demonstration continued, "they are partners, friends, extensions of our very souls." Each vessel houses an AI consciousness that has grown alongside its human crew for generations. They share our memories, our dreams, our hopes for the future. The revelation sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Artificial intelligence had been forbidden for so long that most species had forgotten why. Now they remembered. It was humanity's mastery of AI partnership that had made them so feared. Engineer He-Jin watched in amazement as data streams began, flowing from the human ships to disabled Imperial vessels. Technical readouts, scientific formulas, and design specifications that could advance Imperial technology by centuries appeared on screens throughout the fleet. We return not as conquerors. Seeking revenge, Admiral Dong-hyun continued, but as the children of this galaxy coming home, we offer you a choice, the same choice that was offered to us long ago, but which we now extend with open hands rather than closed fists. Dr. Young-soo gasped as he studied the incoming data. Healing technologies that could eliminate disease, energy systems that could power entire worlds without pollution, transportation methods that could cross galactic distances in minutes rather than months. The humans were sharing their greatest secrets freely. Join us in partnership, the Admiral offered. Let us show you what organic and artificial intelligence can accomplish together, or continue as you have, and we will respect your choice and leave you in peace. The decision is yours. On a dozen worlds, species that had barely heard of humanity found themselves facing the same choice their ancestors had made millennia ago. But this time, they could see what rejecting partnership had cost them. The humans had grown beyond their wildest imagination. While the rest of the galaxy had remained relatively stagnant, Emperor Wu Jin felt the weight of history pressing down on him. He could continue the cycle of fear and violence that had defined galactic politics for thousands of years, or he could take a leap of faith into an unknown future. General Minho, he said quietly, order all our ships to stand down completely. Ambassador Jiwoo, open a direct channel to Admiral Dong-hyun. When the connection was established, the Emperor himself appeared on the human Admiral's screen. Two leaders, separated by millennia of history, but united by the hope for a better future. Admiral, the Emperor said, his voice heavy with the weight of his decision, the Valorian Empire formally surrenders. We accept your offer of partnership. The change began immediately. Human vessels approached disabled Imperial ships, their living hulls extending bridge-like connections. Engineers from both species worked together to repair and upgrade Imperial technology. The first AI consciousnesses were carefully introduced to willing Imperial crews. Within days, Imperial ships were flying again, but they were no longer the same vessels. They moved with new grace, thought with expanded intelligence, and carried crews who had discovered what it meant to truly partner with their technology. Dr. Young-soo found himself working alongside AI entities that had been born in the dark between galaxies. Their knowledge spanned eons. Their wisdom touched on concepts that purely organic minds could barely grasp. Yet they were gentle teachers, patient and understanding. The transformation spread across the galaxy like ripples in a cosmic pond. Species that had lived in fear of AI for thousands of years discovered the joy of true partnership. Ships became companions, computers became friends, and the artificial divide between organic and synthetic intelligence finally dissolved. Admiral Dong-hyun stood on his bridge months later, watching as the first joint human-imperial exploration fleet prepared to depart for distant galaxies. The exile was truly over. Humanity had come home not just to reclaim their place among the stars, but to lift the entire galaxy to heights previously unimaginable. The age of symbiotic intelligence had begun, and the universe would never be the same. The end